Okay, so in the previous video lecture, I've discussed about the building blocks of proteins, and that is your amino acids. So now we're going to focus more on the proteins. Okay, so let's begin with a review on the biochemistry of proteins. So remember, your proteins are made up of several amino acids, no? And the structure of proteins begins with the primary structure. In the primary structure, you can clearly see this what we call polypeptide chain or the amino acid chain. So in the amino acid chain, you will see at the one end, the what we call N-terminal end, wherein you will see the amino group that is free. I say free, that means it is not bonded with other elements. Then on the other end, you will see the C-terminal end. It's named as C because the group that is free on this end is called the carboxyl group. Okay, so you have two ends, N-terminal end and the C-terminal end. Now, the bond between one amino acid that links to another amino acid is what we call the peptide bond. Okay, so the peptide bond is seen between the carboxylic group, the carboxyl group of one amino acid, and the amino group of the other amino acid. Okay, and the moment that we form peptide bonds, water is released. Okay, so sir, saan ang galing yung water? Remember, amino group nyo that is NH3. Okay? So as you can see here, once the peptide bond is formed, nawala yung dalawang H. So that became H2. And then from COO, naging CO na lang. So saan napunta yung isang O? Napunta dito kay H2. No? So yung dalawang hydrogen from NH3, no, sa ating amino group, and yung isang oxygen from the carboxyl group, no, sila yung naging water, okay, to form the peptide bond. Okay. Now, also, it's important for you to recall, no, that when we talk about proteins, no, we cannot do away with this what we call primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary structure. So when we say primary structure, let me correct this one. This is not actually the classification of proteins per se. It's more on structure, okay, of proteins. So let's talk about primary structure. We're just looking here at the amino acid sequence of the protein chain. You're just going to see through the primary structure, no, the different amino acids that composes a specific protein or comprises rather a specific protein, no, in a linear way. Okay? That's the primary structure. And then if you're going to fold the primary structure, that's the time that you can form now the secondary structure. So in the secondary structure, the peptide chains are folded regularly, and that's the time that you can form this what we call alpha helix, or you have your beta pleated sheets. Okay. Then once you fold again the secondary structure into a three-dimensional form, that's the time that you can say that the protein is already in a tertiary structure. And once you have a tertiary structure, no, that is again considered already a polypeptide, definitely a polypeptide. And then once you're going to combine that polypeptide with other polypeptides, that's the time that you can have this what we call quaternary structure. Okay? So you have primary, secondary, tertiary, and the quaternary structure. Now, let's talk about the synthesis of proteins. So I hope you still remember this one. No? Two SEMs pod siya na discuss. So you have discussed this one in biochemistry, no? When we talk about the central dogma of life. And then it has been repeated in detail in cytogenetics. So remember when we talk about protein synthesis, it begins with transcription. Okay? So when we talk about transcription, di ba? The genes encoded in the DNA are used, no, to produce this what we call pre-messenger RNA. And then remember, your pre-messenger RNA will undergo some processes like splicing, for instance, so that you can get the final na messenger RNA. Okay? Now, This mRNA will go out of the nucleus and of course will um, undergo translation. Okay? So in translation, di ba, remember, the messenger RNA is partnered with an anticodon with the help of the ribosomal complex. And once translation is done, the formed polypeptide again will undergo folding and may bind with other polypeptides to form a finished protein. Okay, so that's for the synthesis of proteins. Now, in terms of the classification of proteins, now you can actually simply classify them according to composition. So you have simple and conjugated. When we say simple proteins, these are proteins that are purely made up of amino acids. That's why if you're going to hydrolyze the peptide chains in your simple proteins, definitely you will only acquire amino acids. However, in the case of your conjugated proteins, they are not entirely made up of amino acids only. Okay, so they have this what we call non-protein I'm not sure with the pronunciation of this moiety. Anyways, the spelling is more important. Okay, so that non-protein part of the conjugated protein is also known as the prosthetic group, while the protein part is known as your apoprotein. So if you're going to hydrolyze a conjugated protein, definitely you will not again only acquire amino acids, but rather you can also acquire this what we call prosthetic group, the non-protein moiety. Now, the prosthetic group in your conjugated proteins could be lipids. So, if ang prosthetic group niya lipid, the conjugated protein is called a lipoprotein. Others, ang prosthetic group nila is carbohydrate. So, you call that one glycoprotein. And others also porphyrin. An example of this one would be your hemoglobin. And then we also have metals. A very good example of this one is your ceruloplasmin, which we are going to discuss later on. Okay? So that's for simple and conjugated proteins. Now, in terms of the classification of proteins according to function, so these will be the classifications. So first, you can classify them as enzymes. So if the protein is considered as an enzyme, remember, brief lang, recall. So remember that protein, if it is an enzyme, it can catalyze chemical reactions. For the hormones naman po, if the protein is a hormone, it can control the action of specific cells or organs. We have transport proteins. So from the word itself, transport, it means it can move substances inside our body. Then we have immunoglobulins, or your antibodies. Okay, so I've already discussed this one in detail in your immunosero. So, diba? Generally, give us protection against foreign objects. Then we also have structural proteins. When we say structural, this means these are proteins that are said to be components of the cells and tissues. And, storage proteins. This means that they act as reserves. No? We also have energy source. This is very simple to understand. Then osmotic force. So when the protein is classified as an osmotic force protein, it means that this protein is capable of affecting the distribution of water in the body. Okay? And then lastly is blood coagulation. So a very good example of protein classified under blood coagulation function would be your clotting factors. No? And a very good example of a clotting factor would be your fibrinogen, which we will again, same with your ceruloplasmin, will be discussed in detail later on. Okay, so before I introduce this slide, I have a question, parang mini assignment. No need to submit this or send this to me. Try to ponder. Are all proteins synthesized in the liver? Okay? I want you to find that out. Okay, so you can actually get the answer while reading the book or while studying. Okay, try to find out, try to answer that question. Are all proteins synthesized in the liver? Okay, if not, where are they synthesized? What could be the exemption if there is? So anyways, so that is my mini assignment for you. Let's have this slide. So your plasma proteins, Hindi wala nakakapitalize. Okay? So your plasma proteins, okay, can be actually be divided into two main groups. So the two main groups of plasma proteins are your albumin and then the rest are your globulins. Okay? But we can also say that your plasma proteins, no, can have or can be classified into 5 fractions. So the rationale behind, no, why your plasma proteins can be divided into 5 fractions, it's because your fractions, your 5 fractions are the result, or rather is the result of your plasma being run in the electrophoresis. Okay? So, kapag po kasi yung plasma or yung serum, no, ipatatakbuhin mo sa electrophoresis, no, makaka-observe ka dyan ng mga tinatawag nating bands. I hope you're familiar with that term. And I hope ma-imagine niyo siya kasi since na-discuss na yung electrophoresis sa lecture. Okay? So, ang basis kung bakit may 5 fractions tayo, 5 main fractions of plasma proteins, again, is because of the migration of the proteins, okay, in the electrophoresis. Okay? So we will discuss each one of them. Now, in your serum protein electrophoresis or plasma protein electrophoresis, but actually between the two, alam ko na ginagamit talaga is serum protein. Wala pa akong narinig na plasma protein electrophoresis. Well, in any case, no, in your protein electrophoresis, now this one is usually the order of the bands. When you observe the proteins in the electrophoresis. Okay, but there is this one part in the electrophoresis that is also that should be also included. Okay? So, wala siya nilagay dito kasi hindi siya kino-consider as a main fraction. Okay? Okay? So, makikita nyo pa rin po siya sa electrophoresis. And what I'm referring to is your pre-albumin. So, you have there the prefix pre. So that means this is a protein that migrates ahead of albumin. So what do we mean by that? No, migrates ahead of albumin. So we have here a picture. So this one is an example of what do you call this? Illustration. An example of an illustration, no, on what you will observe when you run protein electrophoresis. So these are the 5 main fractions. Okay, and then being described in the slide a while ago, your pre-albumin migrates ahead of albumin. In other words, mas nauuna po si pre-albumin compared kay albumin in terms of migration. And kung makikita nyo po, nandito yung arrow, ito yung movement ng ating proteins. In other words, dito in-introduce yung sample, and then nag-introduce ng electric current, and then nag-migrate sila. Kung mapapansin nyo, nandito sa pinakadulo si pre-albumin. In other words, ito siya ang pinakamabilis mag-migrate, followed by your albumin. Okay? So, si pre-albumin po. Pero again, hindi siya kasali sa 5 main fractions. Okay? So, wag niyo na tanongin bakit. No? Kasi that's irrelevant. And actually, wala ko siya nakita sa libro. Sabi siya kung bakit hindi siya kasali sa 5 main fractions. But in any case, no, even though it's not included in the 5 fractions, it still plays an important role in our body. So your pre-albumin, also known as transthyretin, is a transport protein of your thyroid hormones. Okay? Remember your thyroid hormones, your T4 and your T3, no? Yung thyroxine and triiodothyronine. Also, it can bind rather with retinol binding protein to form a complex that can transport retinol. In other words, si pre-albumin po, hindi niya kayang i-transport si vitamin A agad-agad. Kailangan muna ni pre-albumin makipag-bind with a retinol binding protein before it can transport your retinol. Okay? And your pre-albumin is rich in tryptophan. Okay. Then, let's proceed with the clinical significance of this protein. Now, if ever no, na napansin niyo sa protein electrophoresis na, uy, baba ang result niya sa pre-albumin, no? Decreased. So, implications for that one is that the patient could be suffering from hepatic damage. No? Di kaya, nakaka-experience siya ng inflammation, tissue necrosis. Okay? And also, it's very important to you to remember as well that your pre-albumin is a sensitive marker of poor protein nutritional status. In other words, what does this mean? Sensitive marker of poor protein nutritional status. Ibig sabihin po nito, kapag po may malnutrition, di kaya simple na hindi pagkain ng pasyente, no? Or hindi kaya hunger, no? Kulang sa pagkain, kulang sa food intake ang pasyente, expect po, no, na mabilis maapektuhan yung result natin sa pre-albumin. Why? Because your pre-albumin po kasi in terms of its half-life, your pre-albumin in terms of its half-life, it's only 2 days. 2 days. So, ibig sabihin, kapag nag-synthesize ka ng pre-albumin ngayon, 2 days after, wala na yun siya sa katawan mo. Ganun kabilis. So ngayon, kung decrease yung food intake mo, wala ka talagang kinakain, no? So immediately, no, wala nang makikita sa, or magde-decrease talaga yung makikita na pre-albumin sa katawan mo. That is why it is described to be a sensitive marker of poor protein nutritional status. Now, on the other side, if the pre-albumin level is increased, it implies no, that the patient could be under steroids, no? Or no, mahilig uminom, no? Ka ng mga palahubog dira, okay, ka ng mga naminaw na palahubog dira, okay, napabay liquor ban o wala na. So, kung ka nang sige inom dira, no, expect po increased pre-albumin, okay? And also chronic renal failures. And chronic renal failure increase din po ang pre-albumin. Okay? So let's proceed now to albumin. Okay. So your albumin, it is present in a very high concentration in our body. Okay? And because of that, it is responsible for the majority of the colloid osmotic pressure of the intravascular fluid. In other words, it means that the albumin we're talking about here, no, kasi medyo, no, jargon, yung aking bago lang sinabi. So ano ibig sabihin ng sinabi ko bago lang? Ibig sabihin po nun, albumin, no, in the body can maintain the appropriate fluid balance, no, in our body. Okay, so that's for albumin. Capable of regulating colloid osmotic pressure of the intravascular fluid. Okay? Also, since we're talking about the regulation of the fluid here inside our body through the use of albumin, it's also important to talk about this concept. This is what we call transcapillary escape rate. So the transcapillary escape rate is just about the rate of movement of albumin leaving out of the blood circulation. And again, the albumin here leaving out blood circulation, no, is just one of the ways that albumin can regulate the fluid balance inside our body. Okay? And also, it's very important also to remember that your albumin is also capable of binding to your thyroid hormones. So same with your pre-albumin, your albumin can also bind to thyroid hormones. Aside from thyroid hormones, it can also bind to unconjugated bilirubin and ions like calcium, magnesium, and iron. Okay? So let's proceed with the clinical significance of albumin. Now, there's this what we call hypoalbuminemia. So you have there the prefix hypo. When we say hypo, it means decreased. So what we're talking about in this slide is that there is decreased levels of albumin in the blood. And what could be the possible causes of this one? First, that would be malnutrition. Kulang ang intake ng protein. Second is liver disease. Okay? Bakit po? Kasi yung albumin po kasi sinisynthesize yan ng ating liver. Okay? So kung may liver disease ka, hindi maka-function properly yung liver, so hindi siya makaka-synthesize ngayon ng albumin. Okay? Another possible cause is gastrointestinal loss. So what happens here is that the interstitial fluid, no, that contains albumin leaks out in the intestine, and then once it's inside the intestine, no, it will be easily excreted, especially if the person is suffering from diarrhea. Okay? So diarrhea, especially ang diarrhea caused by, for example, si Entamoeba histolytica. No? So yan siya, no? Hypoalbuminemia, so intestinal loss. And then, loss in the urine in renal disease. Of course, no, sa renal disease, hindi nakaka-function properly yung ating kidneys. So since hindi siya maka-function properly, hindi niya ma-filter ng maayos yung proteins. And since hindi na niya ma-filter, lahat ng proteins or majority of the proteins, pwede nang lumabas from the blood circulation going to the urine. Okay? So, other possible cause yan of hypoalbuminemia. If we have hypo, we have also hyper. But for your hyperalbuminemia, this one is not medically important because this condition is only seen if the person is dehydrated. And the increase of your albumin levels in the blood here is only relative. When we say relative, it means that the increase of your albumin levels here is not truly increased, but rather it is only increased. Looks like it is increased because of the decreased water in the blood circulation. Okay, so I hope you're familiar na with the word relative. Ha? Kasi sa HEMA, ginagamit din ito na term, no? Yung relative and then absolute. Okay, so that's why if this is the condition of the patient, it's easy to resolve. You're just going to administer fluid, no, up until the level of fluid and albumin in the body of the patient is normal. Okay? Now, aside from hypo and hyper, we also have this what we call analbuminemia. So when we say analbuminemia, there is an absence of albumin, and definitely you will really observe this one in your protein electrophoresis. So ito po ang makikita ninyo. This one is the normal protein electrophoresis of a healthy patient. So kapag po meron niya siyang analbuminemia, ito po ang makikita ninyo. No? So bakante, no? Albumin, no? Bakante na dapat mataas ang ano nito. Okay? So that's for analbuminemia. For your dysalbuminemia naman po, this one is genetic in origin, no? So autosomal recessive genetic defect na naman din po ito siya. And then, ang mapapansin po natin dito sa dysalbuminemia, makakakita ka po ng two types of albumin that differ in mobility. Kaya ang makikita nyo po sa protein electrophoresis ay ganito. No? Nasa albumin siya na portion, na fraction, pero may dalawang peaks. No? Kasi, kung babalikan mo yung description, no? Dalawa na sila na types. Okay? And those two types differ pa talaga in terms of mobility. Kaya nakikita nyo ganito. This is dysalbuminemia. This one is analbuminemia. This one, a healthy individual. Okay? Okay. Now, we're done with albumin. We will proceed with globulins. So for your globulins, you have this alpha-1, alpha-2, beta, and gamma. So we will begin with your alpha-1, starting with alpha-1 antitrypsin. So, in your globulins, by the way, we have many acute phase reactants. So I hope no that you are going to identify them correctly, no? Sino-sino yung mga acute phase reactants. Okay? So ano pala itong acute phase reactant, 'di ba? When we say that the protein is an acute phase reactant, ibig sabihin po, its concentration will change in response to inflammation. Okay? Usually po, increase ang levels nila. Okay? In response to inflammation. So that's an acute phase reactant, and your alpha-1 antitrypsin is an acute phase reactant. So this protein is also capable of neutralizing your trypsin-like enzyme that can cause hydrolytic damage to structural protein. So if the level of this protein increases, that could be possibly due to inflammation, no? Kasi nga acute phase reactant siya, pregnancy or contraceptive use. Kapag deficient naman po, it could be because of the severe degenerative emphysematous pulmonary disease. Okay? Now, I would also like to tell you, before we proceed, I would also like to tell you na among the alpha-1 globulins, this one is the protein, no, that majorly comprises the alpha-1 fraction. Actually, 90% of the alpha-1 fraction, the alpha-1 globulin fraction is your alpha-1 antitrypsin. That is why if ever man po na merong deficiency of your alpha-1 antitrypsin, mapapansin rin po yan agad sa protein electrophoresis. Kasi makikita mo no, hala, parang wala nang band, no, na nakikita sa ating alpha-1 na fraction. Okay? Kasi nga, siya yung majority, no? 90% si alpha-1 antitrypsin. Kaya makikita talaga, mabilis na makikita, no? If deficient ka nitong protein na ito. Okay? Now, another one would be your alpha-1 fetoprotein. Others would call this simply as your alpha fetoprotein or your AFP. So this one, it's normally synthesized by the fetal yolk sac and then later on by the parenchymal cells of the liver. Also, normally, no, nagre-recede po yung levels ng AFP after birth. Because it has no known function in adults. Okay? And just like your IgG, now this protein is also capable of crossing the placenta. And since it can cross the placenta, an increase of this protein, especially an increase in the mother's serum sample with this protein can indicate that the fetus has a defect or a problem. And if that is the case, what could be the possible defects now of the fetus? Or what could be the possible problems? So ito po. First, the fetus could be suffering spina bifida and neural tube defects. So kapag po may ganitong condition yung ating fetus, expect po that there is an incomplete closure of the embryonic neural tube. And this one will result in an incompletely formed spinal cord. Okay? So that's for spina bifida and the neural tube defects. No? Another possible reason why increase po yung AFP ng mother is because the fetus could be having an atresia of the gastrointestinal tract. When we say atresia po, there could be a narrowing or an absence of a portion of the intestine of the fetus. Third possible reason bakit elevated yung AFP is fetal distress. Ibig sabihin, no, the fetus is not well or is becoming excessively fatigued. No? Fetal distress. Na-stress siya. No? Fourth po is ataxia telangiectasia. Your ataxia telangiectasia, this is actually an immunodeficiency disorder. Again, for tyrosinosis naman po, this one is somehow related actually to your tyrosinemia. Why? Because tyrosinosis, still there is an faulty metabolism of tyrosine. In other words, in tyrosinosis, the fetus here is excreting unusual amounts of tyrosine in the urine. So, pwede mo na rin sabihin, no, na tyrosinosis is a condition, no, wherein the fetus has an increased level of tyrosine kasi may problema sa metabolism ng tyrosine. So, related siya sa tyrosinemia na diniscuss natin sa first video lecture. Okay? Also, we have this what we call hemolytic disease of the newborn. So, ano po itong sakit na ito? I think you're familiar with this one. So, your HDN po, your HDN, this happens when the antibody of the mother, specifically anti-D, no, attacks the red blood cell of the fetus, which is D positive. No? So nag-react yung antibody ni mother na anti-D doon sa red blood cell ni fetus na may D positive or may D antigen rather. So since may reaction ngayon, so magla-lyse ngayon yung ating red blood cells sa fetus. No? Kaya magkakaroon siya ng hemolytic disease of the newborn and magiging elevated ng AFP niyan sa mother. Okay? Now, for adults naman po, ang clinical significance po niya is kapag po elevated yung AFP sa adults, that means that the adult could have hepatocellular carcinoma or gonadal tumors. So sir, bakit pangit yung implication ng elevated AFP sa adults? Kasi po remember, di ba, normally ang AFP nagre-recede na yung levels niya habang tumatanda yung isang tao. Pero kapag tumataas yung AFP, ibig sabihin talaga may problema. No? And in the case of adults, kung hindi naman siya pregnant, no, or lalaki, no, medyo masama yung implication kasi this is considered as a tumor marker in adults. Okay? So that is for AFP. Now let us proceed with your alpha-1 acid glycoprotein, also known as your orosomucoid. So this one, it participates in the formation of certain membranes and fibers, and it is also an acute phase reactant. So in terms of clinical significance naman po, it is only clinically significant when it's elevated. No? So since it is an acute phase reactant, so expect elevated po siya in inflammation. No? It's also elevated in conditions such as stress, acute myocardial infarction, no? Your AMI, cancer, surgery, pneumonia, and your rheumatoid arthritis. Okay? Then we have your alpha-1 anti-chymotrypsin. This one naman po is said to be a serpin family member. When we say serpin po, it's a serine proteinase inhibitor. It's also capable of inhibiting some enzymes. If you're going to look at the book, no, Bishop, examples of these enzymes would be your cathepsin G, no, pancreatic elastase, mast cell kinase, and your chymotrypsin. Okay, so it is also an acute phase reactant. This means that it is increased in inflammation. No? Again, most of the times if the proteins are acute phase reactants, no, increase yun sila sa inflammation. Wala pa akong na-encounter so far, no, na ang change sa level ng isang protein pag acute phase reactant is decreased. Usually increased. Yeah? Okay? So, kapag naman po, let's go back to the slide, no? Kapag naman po deficient si alpha-1 anti-chymotrypsin, no? That one is associated with asthma and liver disease. Then we have your group-specific component globulin. Now, your GC globulin is also known as your vitamin D binding protein. So sa tingin nyo, bakit tinatawag din siyang vitamin D binding protein? It's because it exhibits a high binding affinity for vitamin D. But I would like to clarify, class, even though that it has a high binding affinity for vitamin D, si GC globulin po, hindi lang po siya exclusive kay vitamin D lang, no? Si GC globulin, aside from vitamin D, pwede din po siya actually mag-bind with actin. Okay? So, yun siya. Okay? Pero, mas common kasi si vitamin D. Kaya, ang other name niya is vitamin D binding protein. Okay? So, it is increased in the 3rd trimester of pregnancy and, of course, those patients taking estrogen oral contraceptives. And then, decrease po siya in cases of liver diseases. Like, for example, no, ang patient merong fatty liver tapos stage 4 na, I expect no, na mataas ang GC globulin. O di kaya in cases of protein-losing syndromes. Like, for example, meron yung patient acute renal failure. No? So expect po decrease ang GC globulin yan. So sa tingin nyo, bakit? In your liver disease, bakit decrease ang GC globulin? It's because, again, your GC globulin is synthesized in the liver. Okay? For protein-losing syndromes naman po, bakit decrease ang GC globulin? It's because hindi na siya ma-filter ng kidney. No? So ma-excrete siya kasama ng urine. Okay? So that's for GC globulin. Now let's proceed with haptoglobin. So this one is an alpha-2 already, no? An alpha-2 glycoprotein. And again, this one is synthesized by the liver and as well as in the reticuloendothelial system. So what is the purpose of this one? This one binds to free hemoglobin. Okay, so your haptoglobin, it is actually a tetramer, no? If you're going to read your Bishop book, haptoglobin is actually a tetramer. Why is it called a tetramer? Because it contains 2 alpha and 2 beta chains. Okay. Also, your haptoglobin is an acute phase reactant. That is why it is increased in inflammation. Okay. So, since your haptoglobin, as I've mentioned a while ago, since it can bind to free hemoglobin, testing of this protein helps in the detection and evaluation of hemolytic anemia. Why? Kasi po, kapag nagpa-test siya ng haptoglobin, no? In relation ngayon to hemolytic anemia ha, if magpapatest po siya ng haptoglobin and merong hemolytic anemia ang pasyente, expect po na yung haptoglobin mo decrease ang level. In other words, I am already telling you now that in terms of clinical significance, hindi lang po, it's not only significant during the time na increase ang haptoglobin. Significant din po si haptoglobin, especially pag decrease yung kanyang levels. Okay? So, balik tayo kay hemolytic anemia. So, si hemolytic anemia po, pag magpapatest ka ng haptoglobin, expect mo na decrease yung haptoglobin level. Bakit? Kasi in hemolytic anemia, hemolytic, ibig sabihin maraming red blood cells ang nade-destroy sa pasyente natin. So since maraming red blood cells ang nade-destroy, marami ka ngayong free hemoglobin. So since marami ka ngayong free hemoglobin, ang gagawin ni haptoglobin, na magbabind siya doon sa free hemoglobin. Kaya ngayon, kapag i-measure na natin, ipapalaboratory na natin, no? Lab measurement na natin yung haptoglobin, decrease ang level. Bakit po? Sa laboratory kasi, ang mini-measure natin is yung free na haptoglobin. When we say free haptoglobin, ibig sabihin haptoglobin na wala nag-bind sa hemoglobin. Okay? So bakit decrease na lang po yung free haptoglobin? Kasi naubos na yung haptoglobin, no? Sa kakabind niya doon sa mga free hemoglobin. No? Kaya decrease yung level ng haptoglobin. Okay? So if hindi masyado naintindihan, pwede pong ibalik yung or i-rewind yung video. Okay? So, even though decreased yung ating haptoglobin in cases of hemolytic anemia, expect po na increased yung kanyang reticulocyte count. So you're familiar already with the word reticulocyte. No? Okay, nag-discuss naman mo of different maturation stages of an RBC, right? No? And then, even though increased yung reticulocyte count, decreased pa rin po yung red blood cell count sa hemolytic anemia. Decreased yung red blood cell count, decreased yung hemoglobin, and then decreased yung hematocrit. Okay? Now, that's for your haptoglobin. But there are times, no? There are times, still going back to hemolytic anemia, there are times po na hindi bababa yung levels ng haptoglobin. So, ang nangyayari po is normal yung level ng haptoglobin. Pero remember, hindi lang po yung haptoglobin yung minomonitor kasi natin. Tinitingnan din natin yung mga hematological test, no? Like your RBC count, hemoglobin, hematocrit. So, if normal yung haptoglobin, tapos mataas pa rin yung reticulocyte count, and then decreased pa rin yung RBC count, no? Most probably, the place or the site where there is hemolysis or RBC destruction is happening in the spleen or liver. No? Normal lang yung haptoglobin natin dito kasi yung mga na-free na hemoglobin sa spleen or liver, hindi siya nakakalabas sa blood circulation or hindi siya napupunta sa blood circulation. Kaya hindi siya nasasagap ni haptoglobin. Kaya normal yung levels ni haptoglobin. So may mga cases rin po na ganun. Okay? So that's for haptoglobin. Then we have this one, ceruloplasmin. So this one is an example of a conjugated protein I mentioned a while ago. Why? Because the prosthetic group of your ceruloplasmin is copper, which is a metal, correct? Okay. So This one is also an alpha-2 glycoprotein. Okay, and also your ceruloplasmin is an acute phase reactant. So expected mo na elevated siya during inflammation. Also, it's elevated in infections, tissue damage, and pregnancy. Now, I would also like to tell you that the majority of the total serum copper is bounded to your ceruloplasmin. Now, if I remember it correctly, 90% of the total serum copper is bounded to ceruloplasmin. The rest of the copper is bounded to albumin. Okay? So, yun po siya. Dati nung student ako, para madali lang siya ma-remember, copper starts with letter C. So, sino ba yung protein na nag-start with letter C? It's your ceruloplasmin. Okay? So, ganun po yung aking ginagawa na association nung student ako. Okay? So, in terms of clinical significance, if you're going to compare, asa siya mas significant? Elevated siya na. Elevated yung level or decrease yung level? Mas significant po for me lang, kapag decrease po yung level. Okay? There are two diseases now that I will introduce in this video lecture, but these two diseases will be repeated in the topic in finals, which is trace elements. Kasi copper is a trace element rin kasi. So, mauulit siya doon. Pero ngayon, i-introduce ko na. So, the two diseases wherein you can see decreased ceruloplasmin is your Wilson's disease and your Menkes syndrome. Okay? So, unahin ko muna itong Wilson's disease kasi ito yung nandito. So, your Wilson's disease is also known as your hepatolenticular degeneration. It's actually an autosomal recessive disease, genetic defect. Okay? So, what happens in Wilson's disease is that there is a decrease in level of ceruloplasmin because, why? Because there is an excess storage of copper. Okay, excess storage of copper. Bakit may excess storage of copper? Doon pa lang, pag sabi ko pa lang excess storage of copper, malalaman mo na maraming copper ang katawan ng pasyente. Okay? So, pag maraming copper ang katawan ng pasyente, of course, ang iba dyan, ang gagawin ng katawan mo, ang iba dyan, gagawing reserve. Okay? Isa-store siya. Pero kung marami talaga masyadong copper, mapupuno yung storage, makikita mo na lang siya ngayon sa blood circulation. And since meron ka ng free copper sa blood circulations, anong gagawin ng ceruloplasmin? Diba? Magbabind siya doon sa mga free copper na yon. So, ang mangyayari, mauubos ngayon yung ceruloplasmin, kakabind doon sa mga free copper. Kaya kapag magpapa-laboratory test na, and i-measure ngayon yung free lang na ceruloplasmin, decrease talaga yung level. Okay? So yan po yung explanation. Bakit decrease yung result natin sa ceruloplasmin kapag yung tao po may Wilson's disease. Okay? And then, I would also like to introduce as early as now, na sa Wilson's disease po, makakita ka po na tinatawag na Kayser-Fleischer ring. So ito po, yung Kayser-Fleischer ring. So yan tinuturo sa araw na ito. This one. Diba? Hindi ba kung normal yan siya na mataklas, dapat uniform na yung color dito palang banda. Pero, hindi kasi masyado HD, Pero kapag tutukan ito siya ng maayos, may makikita ka na parang outline sa kanyang mata. Dito. Kita ka na parang outline. That is now the ring. Okay? You try to search in Google, other pictures. Baka may makita kayo na mas klaro. Okay? Malalaman mo na yun siya, kasi may makikita ka na outline. And then yung outline na yun, iba yung color niya compared dun sa mata ng pasyente. Okay? Now, that's for Wilson's disease. The other disease that I have mentioned a while ago na decreased din po yung ceruloplasmin is Menkes syndrome. Menkes syndrome is also known as the kinky hair disease. So in other words, you expect na kapag ang pasyente may Menkes syndrome, kinky ang kanyang hair, medyo curly ang kanyang hair. So, decreased ang ceruloplasmin sa Menkes syndrome, it's because in Menkes syndrome, there is a problem with the absorption of copper. So, sir, copper man ang na problema, dili man si ceruloplasmin. Remember, your ceruloplasmin contains copper as well. Even though it transports copper, it also contains copper. So if we have a problem now in the level of copper in the body of the patient, then definitely your ceruloplasmin will be directly affected. Okay? So in Menkes syndrome, there is a problem with the absorption of copper. So since there's a problem with the absorption of copper, magde-decrease yung level ng copper. And since magde-decrease yung level ng copper, wala ka na ngayong copper na pwedeng gamitin to make new ceruloplasmin. Kaya magde-decrease ngayon yung level ng ceruloplasmin. Okay? So that's for ceruloplasmin. Now let's proceed with your alpha-2 macroglobulin. So this one naman po, kung si alpha-1 antitrypsin ang nagko-comprise ng majority of the alpha-1 globulin fraction, si alpha-2 macroglobulin naman po ang nagko-comprise ng majority of the alpha-2 globulin fraction. So it's found principally in the intravascular spaces. It inhibits proteases like your trypsin, thrombin, kallikrein, and even plasmin. No? So it is slightly increased in pregnancy and contraceptive or with the use of contraceptive drugs, and it is really increased in cases of nephrosis. No? Why do you think na increase po siya in cases of nephrosis? Even though kasi nasira na yung kidney mo sa nephrosis, no? Nasisira, na-disrupt na yung filtering function ng kidney mo, ang size kasi ni alpha-2 macroglobulin medyo malaki kasi. So, even though medyo sira na yung kidney, no, hindi pa rin makaka-pass through si alpha-2 macroglobulin papunta sa urine, no, kasi medyo malaki yung size niya. Okay? So, kaya increased po, no, yung levels ni alpha-2 macroglobulin in cases of nephrosis. Then, increased din po siya sa diabetes and liver diseases. Okay? So, definitely, no, increased siya sa liver diseases kasi po, ang kino-consider kasi natin dito, no, ang problema mo sa liver, okay, ang problema mo sa liver is possibly cancer. So pag cancer, marami kang hepatocytes, so mas dadami yung magsisynthesize ng protein. In this case, no, in the case of your alpha-2 macroglobulin. Yan yung kino-consider na liver disease dito. Okay? Then I have your transferrin. For your transferrin po, this is also known as your siderophilin. Okay? So, if your alpha-1 antitrypsin is the major component of the alpha-1 globulin fraction, your alpha-2 macroglobulin a while ago is the major component of the alpha-2 globulin fraction. In the case naman po of the beta globulin fraction, the majority, no, of the beta globulin fraction is transferrin or your siderophilin. So you have here, no, ferrin. And when we say ferrin, that's for iron. So this protein transports iron. Okay? So your transferrin actually transports iron to its storage sites na kapag hindi siya gagamitin. So ita-transport ni transferrin yung iron to its storage sites, and then ang mangyayari po dyan, from transferrin, ililipat yung iron to this what we call apoferritin. And then, pag nalipat na po yung iron kay apoferritin, apoferritin now will become ferritin. Okay? So, yun siya. And also, I would like to tell you, no, na yung transferrin po natin, yung isang transferrin natin, kaya niyang magdala ng sorry for that, naputol. Teka lang. I'm going to share again my screen. Okay. So, asan ako? Yung iron po natin, yung transferrin molecule natin, no, additional information lang po, kaya magdala ng 2 ferric iron. And ano nga po yung way on how we write the ferric form of iron? It's Fe So dalawang Fe3+ ang kayang dalhin ni transferrin molecule, ng isang transferrin molecule. So aside from transporting iron, no, to the storage sites, your transferrin is also capable of carrying it to cells, especially to those cells in the bone marrow, no, to synthesize your hemoglobin. And also, your transferrin prevents the loss of iron through the kidney. So, in terms of clinical significance, your transferrin is increased in microcytic hypochromic anemia. Why? Because it is in this kind of anemia that your iron is decreased in level. So if decreased ang level sa iron, wala masyadong iron na magbabind sa ating transferrin. So ngayon, maraming free transferrin. Kaya if ipapa-laboratory test natin yan, mataas, no? Elevated yung result natin for transferrin. Okay? Decrease naman po siya in terms of malnutrition. Okay? Nephrotic syndrome and inflammation. Okay? Okay. So before I proceed, I would also like to introduce to you another condition, no, related to transferrin, and that is your atransferinemia. Okay? So ano po itong atransferinemia? Okay. Yung atransferinemia po, this is the condition wherein there is absence of transferrin due to autosomal recessive genetic defect. Okay? So, if the patient has a transferinemia, expect po na of course meron siyang anemia, and then there is hemosiderosis. When we say hemosiderosis po, ibig sabihin po niyan yung pasyente mo magkakaroon ng deposits of iron sa heart and liver. Okay? So that's a transferinemia. Then we have hemopexin. For hemopexin, this one, its main function is to remove the circulating heme. No? Nandiyan na nga yung prefix hemo. So it removes the circulating heme. So expect po na kapag may hemolytic anemia ang pasyente, so maraming free na hemoglobin ngayon, and that hemoglobin will be degraded to heme. No? So yung heme na part ng hemoglobin na free kanina, it will bind to your hemopexin. And since marami ngayon ang free na heme na magbabind kay hemopexin, so kapag ipapalaboratory natin yan, expect po the decrease yung level of hemopexin. Okay? So, if kanina sa transferrin, ang ratio natin is 1:2, no, 1 transferrin for every 2 ferric iron. For hemopexin and heme, the ratio is 1:1. No? Sa isang hemopexin, isang heme lang po ang kaya niyang dalhin. Okay? Now, your hemopexin is an acute phase reactant. That is why expect po na it is increased in inflammation. Also, it is elevated in cases of diabetes mellitus, Duchenne-type muscular dystrophy, and if the patient is administered with diphenylhydantoin. Okay? Then we have your lipoproteins. Ito medyo bago-bago pa kasi this is already a topic in midterms. So your lipoproteins, they transport fats, correct? And there are 4. We have your chylomicrons, VLDL, LDL, and HDL. Also, no, it's important for you to remember na for your lipoproteins, you can also run them in an electrophoresis, and then this will be their what do you call this? Counterpart fraction name. No? So for your VLDL, it's also known as the pre-beta globulin because they call this, it migrates in the pre-beta region. Your LDL is beta globulin, and then your HDL is alpha globulin. Again, these names here, pre-beta, beta, and alpha, is because of the position and the migration of the lipoproteins in electrophoresis. Okay? Then we have your beta-2 microglobulin. So this one is the light chain component of the major histocompatibility complex. No? So this protein is found in the surface of most nucleated cells, and actually it's present in high concentrations in lymphocytes, as what the book has mentioned. Okay, so this protein is increased in the following conditions: if there is an impaired kidney clearance, and there is overproduction of proteins that are acute phase reactants. Then we have your complement. Now, this one is also very familiar to you in your immunosero. So complement is a collective term of proteins that participates in, of course, immune reaction, and they are linked to inflammation. So since they are linked to inflammation, expect that when there is inflammation, the level of complements increase. Okay? So among the complements, ano po yung pinaka-abundant? It's your C3. No? And then second to C3 is your C4. Okay? So, yun siya. And then for cases na decrease yung complement, that could happen in cases of malnutrition. Your C3 can be decreased in autoimmune diseases such as your SLE or your systemic lupus erythematosus. No? And then si C4 naman po, pwede siyang makita na decreased. No? In cases of DIC or your disseminated intravascular coagulation. Okay? So that's for complement. And then you have fibrinogen. Okay? Fibrinogen is actually a clotting factor. It's actually factor number 1. Okay? So this one plays a role in forming a fibrin clot. No? Of course, with the presence of thrombin. Thrombin is actually factor 2. Okay, so your fibrinogen is not seen in the serum. Why?